Welcome back, focused learners. Okay, today we are embarking on a pretty epic journey down the mighty Mississippi River. We're going to explore the beautiful, dangerous, and frankly, incredibly morally complex world of Mark Twain's masterpiece. We're breaking down an American classic that still hits incredibly hard today. So let's get moving. Okay, let's dive into this. Right off the bat, Mark Twain slaps us with this famous, deeply ironic opening warning. I mean, he's literally threatening to prosecute anyone looking for a motive and banish anyone looking for a moral. But this brilliantly sets the satirical tone for the whole thing. Twain is essentially daring us to look closer, and well, that is exactly what we're going to do today. Think of this as our literal map for the river ahead. We'll hit escaping civilized society, sanctuary on the river, dangers of the shore, kings, dukes, and frauds, Huck's ultimate moral crisis, and finally, the grand evasion. Section 1. Escaping civilized society. The push to the river. So to really understand this whole journey, we first have to figure out why Huck had to run. The walls were completely closing in on him in St. Petersburg, from two incredibly extreme directions. See, Huck is caught in this impossible dilemma. On one hand, you've got the widow Douglas and Miss Watson, who represent this stifling civilization. They force him into cramped, stiff new clothes, make him pray over his food, and try to quote-unquote civilize him with spelling books. But then, on the exact opposite side, there's his father, Pap Finn, who represents this terrifying, abusive version of freedom. Pap locks Huck in an isolated log cabin, gets drunk, and violently attacks him. Caught between suffocating rules and complete chaos, Huck's only way out is pretty radical. He actually has to fake his own bloody death using a pig's carcass just to escape to the river. Just to put things into perspective, look at the sheer scale of Huck and Jim's descent here. They start all the way up in St. Petersburg, hide out on Jackson's Island where they team up, drift past the massive lights of St. Louis, and finally wind up way down south at the Phelps farm. It's a massive geographic journey for sure, but an even bigger psychological one. Section 2. Sanctuary on the river. Finding humanity. Okay, so leaving all that land chaos behind, Huck and Jim push off onto the Mississippi. And here, the vibe completely shifts. The panic just melts away. It's lovely to live on a raft. I mean, just listen to that phrasing. Twain's language here is so lyrical and soft. Out on the water, completely stripped of society's weird rules, Huck and Jim share these profound, quiet moments. They lay on their backs, looking up at a sky speckled with stars, having these deep philosophical debates about whether the stars were made or just happened. Out here, they aren't playing the roles society gave them. They are just two human beings forming a genuine, deeply moving friendship. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is, well, we've got to remember Huck is your classic, unreliable narrator. He was raised in a deeply racist, slaveholding society. So when he helps Jim hide, Huck legitimately believes he is doing something wicked. He actually calls himself a low-down abolitionist. He thinks he's sinning. But we know he's actually acting with incredible moral courage. And that massive gap between his corrupted conscience and his inherently good heart, that is the engine driving this entire explainer. Section 3. Dangers of the shore. Society's absurdity. Because, that piece on the raft, it absolutely does not last. The river inevitably pulls them to shore, and things get wild. Every time they step off that raft, it's just a rapid-fire sequence of disasters. They board a wrecked steamboat, only to find literal murderers plotting on it. They get hopelessly lost in a blinding fog, which makes them miss their turn at Cairo, a turn that would have led Jim right to freedom. And then there's the whole Grangerford family situation. Huck meets Buck Grangerford, a kid his own age whose family is just caught in a blood feud with the Shepherdsons. Listen to this. When Huck asks why Buck wants to kill a Shepherdson, Buck literally says, "Him? He never done nothing to me, only it's on account of the feud." It's Twain's absolutely biting satire on the utter pointlessness of so-called civilized Southern honor, and it ends tragically, leaving Huck totally traumatized and desperate to get back to the water. Section 4. Kings, dukes, and frauds. The river invaded. Eventually, all that rot from the shore, it floats right out onto the raft itself. Almost overnight, the whole dynamic changes. The pure honesty and friendship of the raft gets completely hijacked by two desperate con men who claim to be an English duke and the lost king of France. These guys turn the raft into a floating base for scams. They run fake theater shows, pretend to be preachers, and sink to absolute rock bottom by trying to steal the inheritance of grieving orphaned daughters. The sanctuary of the river is officially ruined. And then comes the ultimate betrayal. $40. That is the pitiful, meager amount the king sells Jim back into slavery for while Huck is off in town. Just $40. It's a devastating blow that completely shatters Huck's world. Section 5, Huck's ultimate moral crisis, the turning point. This right here is the absolute narrative core of everything we're discussing. Picture this. Huck is sitting there trembling. He's holding a letter he just wrote to Miss Watson telling her exactly where her runaway slave is. He has to choose right then and there. Does he obey the law, the church, and literally everything society has drilled into his head? Or does he save his friend, the man who stood watch for him in the rain? So the crucial point is, Huck thinks about Jim's kindness. He stares at that letter, and then he says, all right then, I'll go to hell, and he tears it up. It is an amazing moment. Huck's internal compass finally, definitively overrides his corrupted societal programming. He chooses humanity over the law. Section 6, the grand evasion, reality versus romance. Okay, so Huck heads to the Phelps farm to steal Jim back. But then, guess who shows up? Tom Sawyer. Tom completely takes over the rescue, and man, it is exasperating. Tom's plan isn't about saving a human life. It's about playing make-believe based on European adventure novels. Look at these insane demands. Digging Jim out with dull case knives instead of pickaxes, baking a rope ladder into a pie, forcing Jim to tame a rattlesnake as a pet, and scratch a coat of arms into a tin plate. It's funny, sure, but it is also deeply frustrating. The contrast between these two is staggering. Huck is all pragmatism. Pick the lock, get out quietly, survive. But Tom wants quote-unquote glory. He intentionally invents difficulties and puts them all in danger for a thrill. The sheer irony is that Huck has been living an actual life-or-death adventure while Tom treats Jim's very real life like a prop in a children's game. And then we get the twist that literally makes you want to pull your hair out. After all that chaos, Tom gleefully reveals that Miss Watson had actually died 2 months earlier. She felt guilty and set Jim free in her will. Jim was a free man the entire time Tom was putting him through those agonizing, humiliating games. It brilliantly, painfully exposes how utterly pointless and cruel Tom's romanticized worldview really is. But as all the dust settles, we get this one final, really quiet revelation. Remember way back when they found a dead body in a floating house and Jim covered the man's face so Huck couldn't see? Now Jim softly tells him why. He ain't a-comin' back no mo, Huck. That was him. It was Pap Finn. Jim had been protecting Huck from that awful trauma the entire time. Jim was the true, loving father figure all along. So with Jim truly free and Pap gone, our journey wraps up, but Huck, he refuses to settle down. Aunt Sally wants to adopt him, but Huck's final words are a total rejection of the society we've just spent all this time analyzing. Aunt Sally, she's going to adopt me and civilize me, and I can't stand it. I've been there before. He decides to just light out for the Western Territory. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. When you look at all the rules, the hypocrisies, and the structures around us, is it ever really possible to find true freedom within society? Or, to keep our humanity intact, do we all eventually have to light out for the territory? Think on that. Thanks for joining me on the river today.